today I'm excited to have Vanessa Joy here with me from Freehold in New Jersey. Vanessa is an award-winning wedding photographer with a heavy focus on providing a boutique level of experience for all of her clients. Her unique style is a blend of photojournalism with a vintage and rustic feel that enhances the emotions captured by her work. In 2015, she will be one of the featured speakers and educators at WPPI, where she'll be sharing her expertise and knowledge on wedding photography workflow. So welcome to Photography Marketing Masters, Vanessa. It's really great to have you on here with us today.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Awesome. All the way from the East Coast. It's winter. It's kind of getting a bit cold. You're freezing up there?
Yes, I am quite cold. I'm sitting here in a scarf as we speak.
I'm really starting to miss the summer already. And of course, the summer is a great time for weddings. That's the big season here in the States, of course, for weddings. And today's topic is all about creating a boutique experience with wedding photography and how to succeed in today's crowded marketplace. Before we jump into all of that, what was that first little spark of inspiration that got you interested in the photography business to begin with?
You know, I have one of those classic stories where my mother was a photographer, but I have to say I wouldn't necessarily attribute the spark of interest in photography to my mom, but more just the eye for it and being able to learn a lot from her. My original spark was learning in the darkroom in high school. I took a photography course really to kind of please my mom, not because I wanted to. And I just fell in love with developing my own film and prints, and sadly enough, I guess the smell of fixer.
Yeah, that'll get you every time.
Yep.
You started out with film, which, we're moving into that age now where a lot of working photographers today really don't have any experience of working with film at all. They went straight to digital, as it were. How do you feel that gives you an advantage, if you like, in your business?
Well, it's kind of fun seeing now photographers who have only started digital. You see a lot of them starting to experiment with film again, and they're so excited about it, and they're going to try film, and they learn to love it, and they develop a whole new passion for it. And it's a little funny because when I hear of a photographer that has decided to start trying film, it's like, oh, they must have learned on digital. So now letting them experiment with film, I think they're finding a new source of passion and inspiration by working with the medium that way, working with photography in film. And it was an advantage to me, absolutely, to give me that spark. And it's kind of fun seeing other photographers go back to it now.
I imagine the hardest part is getting used to that, having to wait to see the finished photographs. I remember when I was doing film and I was doing landscape work and stuff like that, and you take the photograph, you pack your gear up, you go home, you unwind the film, and wait till the next day. You take it to the developer, and then you have to wait.
Right. Yeah.
Can't look on the back of the camera and see.
Or make corrections or learn or, make revisions. Back then, we were like, okay, frame 20 was shot at f22 ISO 4, film, dictated the ISO, but you would write down your settings so that you could reflect on what you did, what you liked, and learn from it after it was developed.
When I was doing underwater photography, you go down there, you got a 36 exposure film in the camera, and that's it. You got to be rationing those things out throughout the dive. And if you run out, that's it. You run out. You can't change the film. The whole aspects of learning in a film environment, do you think that it taught you things like being able to visualize more and being able to see in more detail in your mind before you took the photograph and that kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things it definitely taught me is to really shoot with more intention. And so I'm not the kind of photographer now, I think because of that, who will come home from a wedding with 4,000 images. I come home with maybe 1,600 images that I cull through. And I think because having been on film where I would go out with 1-2 rolls of film, not on a wedding, by the way, with 1-2 rolls of film. But you had to be more intentional about what you photographed. You had to really think about it, stop, compose it, focus it, make sure your exposure was right, looking at your light meter and wasn't, quick, take a picture back of your camera, fix it, take 17 pictures and one of those will be in focus now. It was much more intentional, and it taught me to slow down a little bit, which I think is an advantage.
I remember when I was doing weddings and those first few where, like you say, you just shoot a whole bunch, and you come back with a lot of photographs to go through. The next wedding after that, I thought to myself as I was photographing, whoa, hold on a minute. Every extra image that you take is going to add more time to you sitting behind that desk, clicking through them and trying to figure out which ones to keep. And I put myself back in that sort of film mindset, where you try to make every image count rather than just getting a machine gun out and just spraying the room and hoping that something comes out,
Absolutely. No spraying and praying.
And wedding photography it's an interesting business because it's very attractive to a lot of new photographers for some reason. Having done it, I don't know why it's that attractive to new people, because it's pretty scary and there's a huge responsibility, of course. But, I think a lot of folks think to themselves, well, it seems like the obvious choice, because people say, oh, you should photograph weddings, or people ask them to photograph a wedding and they go, oh, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Never having done one before. And it's only when they get into it that they realize, oh, boy, this is a bit different to what I expected. But, when you look around at some of the successful wedding photographers, what would you say are the top qualities that you see in those types of people?
The top photographers in weddings really show a consistent effort to continually learning, I would say. And I wouldn't even necessarily say the top photographers that I look up to or that I'm impressed with are the ones that are the most experienced or who have been doing it for the longest. It's the ones that I see really make an effort to master their craft and to learn what it is that they're doing with their camera, with their flash, with their off-camera lights and everything like that. That I find inspiring, because that's when you start to see photographers make strides in their work. And there are some photographers in my area that only started 1 or 2 years ago, but I absolutely love looking at their photograph and love looking at their photographic journey as they progress in learning new skills.
And there's a lot of different business models in photography too. And even for wedding photographers, there's several different business models that people can choose from. How would you describe your particular business model and the way that you approach and position yourself in the market?
It's funny, when I first started in wedding photography, I was working for another company. And back then you would get together in these photography meetings and it was 98% male. And one of the things that the photographers would talk about would be, oh, how many weddings did you do this year? And it was like a measuring stick to how successful you were. I will say that. If you did more weddings and, I did 100 weddings, I did, 50 weddings, whatever it was. So when I first started, that was my mindset. Oh, the more weddings, the more successful you are. And now I've decided to develop the opposite style of business and focus on a smaller quantity of weddings and higher quality of weddings. So now 20 to 25 weddings, 25 is even pushing it towards my max of how many weddings I do. So I run a very boutique style business. It's less weddings, but higher quality, and then a higher price tag on it too.
Would you say that being able to do that gives you the opportunity then to spend more time with your clients?
Absolutely. It lets me spoil my clients. I'm able to get back to their phone calls and emails faster. My clients usually have their wedding album within 6 months of their wedding, because I'm able to give them so much more specialized attention, and then I can give them all sorts of gifts and spoil them that way too.
Yeah, I think one of the telling things is, if you're a wedding photographer and you hand the bride and groom their wedding album and they say, well, actually, we got divorced 2 years ago, it's probably a bit of a sign that you need to speed things up a little bit, wouldn't you say?
Yes, it definitely is. Although I've handed my brides their wedding album 6 months after, and 2 months later they were divorced. So in that case... I think I lost out on money, and I should have been more patient. I don't know.
These things do happen. Unfortunately, sadly enough, they do happen. But obviously, you've positioned yourself as a low volume, higher price tag business. Of course, there's the other model with the lower priced and higher volume model too. But when you moved into that kind of mindset of charging more and doing less, did that give you any butterflies about that? Were you at all nervous about whether or not you would get the clients, or whether you would lose business or find it harder to reach people?
I mean, all of the above. Absolutely. When I first started to do that, it was almost a natural progression also, because I was starting out as a photographer. So my prices were a little bit lower, and naturally they need to be raised as I get more experienced and that kind of thing. But when I started to do the math of, well, you know what, if I raise my prices by $500, then that means I don't need to book book 3 more weddings. I can book 3 less. So I'm doing less work while making more money. And I just started to realize that. And then what happened was, yes, I'm nervous raising prices. I just did it by little increments though. So it wasn't huge steps and all of a sudden I'm charging double. It was every time someone booked my highest package, I raised my prices by $250, $500, just little baby steps. And I ended up raising my prices, I think 4 to 6 times in 1 year. And that made the biggest jump. And it was encouraging that I was able to do that, but it was also difficult because there were a lot of clients that came to me that couldn't afford me when their friend could afford me a year ago. So while I was excited about working less and making more, naturally, there's a lot of fall off of client referrals and people who can afford you. But that's how boutique style businesses work. Most anybody can walk into Payless shoes and grab a pair of shoes that they want, but not everyone's going to be able to walk into Saks Fifth Ave and grab a pair of shoes that they want.
Very true. And one of the things that I thought about when I was doing the wedding photography, and I was in the same sort of position where I decided to start putting my prices up. And one of the thoughts that went through my head, and I don't know if you had the same notion, was, oh boy, now people are going to expect more. People are going to be much more picky if things go wrong. People are going to just expect a lot more from me, because I'm charging more. But I actually found almost the opposite.
Yes, I found the exact same thing. It's funny because the more that people spend, they expect more, but I find that they don't expect more in the photography end of it necessarily because we're setting those expectations by what we put on our website, what we show them, that kind of thing. But they're almost expecting more just in the quality of the experience. And for me, that was perfect because I wanted to send them little surprise gifts here and there. I wanted to, spoil them, like I mentioned before. So they were looking for a higher experience. But when it came to the actual photography and the products that I was giving them, they're almost less picky than the people that are the brides that I had been dealing with who were paying half as much.
I just found that people who pay more complain less. It was a very odd phenomenon. And I think other people that I've talked to have said the same thing, that they've noticed that as well. And so that in itself might be a good reason for people to put their prices up, is that they work with people who really understand and appreciate the photography and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the boutique aspect of your business for a bit, because I'm interested in learning how you make your business a boutique model, your specific business. What are some of the things that you do to create that kind of experience for your clients?
One of the biggest things really is just the amount of weddings that I take and limiting myself that way. With your prices being raised, it's easy to limit, kind of filter who comes in and, make sure you're getting the right kind of bride. But sometimes it's, just making yourself unavailable for certain weddings that, the red flags are going off. So that definitely helps in making sure that the clients that I'm working with, are ones that really appreciate what I'm doing and, that I click with, because that I think is really important. And then some of the other things that I do is really just really high on the customer end, the customer service end, whether it's sending them gifts, whether it's always, replying to them in a timely manner, making sure all my products get out to them on time. A lot of it has to do with the branding and packaging. My albums and prints and things like that are all packaged and branded, so it's a full experience. I'm not just handing them their prints in, a black box. I'm handing them their prints in a box that has their picture on it and a ribbon around it, and that box is in another box that has tissue paper and, that kind of thing. And it's the little stuff like that which creates a higher client experience that people who are coming to a boutique anything, whether it's wedding photography or a clothing store, come to want and expect and appreciate.
What happens afterwards? You've done the photography, they are happily married, you've got them their wedding album and they're on their way. What happens after that? Is that the last time that you see them, or does anything happen after that point?
A few things happen. I do like for them to either come in to pick up their album, or sometimes I'll ship it to them because I do have clients that are out of state. But either way, I give them a sort of goodbye gift, whether it's something big like a wine box with wine glasses and some of my homemade wine. And yeah, I do that it's actually for clients that are mutual clients of my husband, who is a wedding filmmaker.
Okay.
So we do that for mutual clients when they come in. Actually, we give them them coasters with that too. They have our logos on it. These really pretty stone coasters that I get from Blackberry Imaging. Or if they are having me ship the album, then I just send them those coasters and I send them a cute little Dear John breakup letter type thing. And it's fun. It's a nice way to say goodbye, but I really don't say goodbye to a lot of my clients and not speak to them again because of Facebook. Most of them are friends on Facebook and I still see them and interact with them too.
But you specialize just in weddings, right? You don't do family portraits or babies or anything like that, do you?
Right. Every once in a while, I'll have a client that wants me to do her maternity pictures or family pictures later. Maternity, I'll do families every once in a while, but I really tried not to be honest. But every once in a while, I mean, I have clients that I absolutely love and I've done a billion things for them afterwards, and that's fine.
But, if you're a photographer who does weddings and babies and that kind of thing, you probably wouldn't want to send them a breakup letter after the wedding, would you?
Right. No, you would probably send them a coupon for their next session.
Right. But there's no reason why you can't keep up the boutique experience for those people, by sending them, anniversary cards in the mail and that kind of thing, and birthday cards. And then when you find out that they're expecting, you can send them stuff and keep in touch with them that way. I think having talked to quite a few photographers about this whole boutique thing, one of the big things that I think comes out of it is that it's a very personalized and personable type of experience.
It is, very much. And, it'd almost become like friends with them by the end of it, which is great because then they're so much more willing to refer me business when their friends are getting married. They don't think of me as, oh, this is a photographer I use. It's more like, oh, you have to use Vanessa. She was so amazing. She's a good person, good friend. I mean, half the time I imagine they don't even talk about the photography when they're referring me to their friends.
I mean, nobody makes friends with their Sears photographer or JC Penney. I don't even know if they're still doing it, but that kind of thing. Let's shift gear a little and think about attracting the right people. So what would you say are the top 3 marketing methods that you use to attract the right kind of clients for your business?
Yeah, to attract the higher end client, you most certainly have to cast a wider net because, like I mentioned before, it's not for everyone. It's not in everyone's budget. And these clients can be a little bit more difficult to find, because there's not as many of them, honestly. So we really focus on casting a wide net when it comes to a huge social media plan, marketing plan, advertising, that kind of thing. But if I were to pick top 3, it would focus around social media for one, making sure that you are out there on Pinterest and Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, because that is definitely where, for weddings at least, that is where the clients are. And the biggest thing would be ways to focus on creating an amazing customer experience for your clients so that they rave about you. So word of mouth essentially would be the next one. And the way that I do that is twofold. So my second tip would really just be to find ways to spoil your clients and to wow them. And then the third one, which is actually the top one, and if I did absolutely no other marketing whatsoever, I would stick with this. It is the same day edit process that I use at weddings. My clients end up, most of them, as long as there's time essentially for me to do it, they have a same day slideshow at the wedding, which is, you see that fairly often. But what I actually do is give them a same day album as well. And they're completely shocked and surprised.
Well, so am I. A same day album?
Same day album. Yep. 4x6 self-mount album. Nice little small thing that they can throw in their bag and carry to work with them the next day or on their honeymoon.
Do you have an army of elves working for you as well? How's that work?
Always an army of elves. Absolutely.
I mean, seriously, how does that work? How can you have a book or an album ready the same day? That's not something I've heard of before.
Yeah. So what I do is I do have a portable printer and an assistant as well. And during the cocktail hour and parts of the downtime at the reception, first or second course, when everyone's sitting down, nothing's happening, and, we're not eating those courses, I'll sit down and edit roughly 60 to 80 of my favorite photos from the night. And I pick 10 of them to go print out into this album. And I'm only doing the part really where I'm picking and editing the photos, and then my assistant does the rest. And not only is she making that album, but she's also also that night uploading those pictures onto Facebook. She's writing most of my blog post for me, getting the pictures ready to submit to online publications and magazines, and a whole bunch more things. Yeah, well, it's a lot. It's pretty crazy, but I have made a checklist that kind of explains it all. If you just go to vanessajoy.com/SDE for same day edit, you can download a checklist, and it pretty much just tells you what I do and what I use to do it. And if you go to Creative Live, I do have a workshop on there, just, so you can actually see how I do it and watch me do the whole process. It's fun, but it's fun. It wows my clients, and it definitely sets me apart and gets them talking about me. And it's one of the best things I've ever done for marketing.
That is just amazing. My goodness me. Actually, while we're on this topic, I know that this year you're talking at WPPI on wedding photography workflow. Is that part of this thing too? Is all of that same day edit part of that, or is that something different?
Yes, it's definitely part of it. The same day edit is such a crucial part of my workflow because it jumpstarts my marketing plan, and it does so much of what most photographers are doing on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It all gets done the night of the reception. So it's a lot. It's a huge part of what I do with my workflow and how I make it function smoothly and efficiently.
I've only ever done a couple of events where I was printing images. It was like a school prom or something like that. While it was somewhat lucrative, I was about ready to plug myself into an electrical outlet when I got home, because it was just so stressful.
It is. And the key is it's stressful, or it was stressful for you because they were expecting that. My clients weren't expecting it. So and it happens sometimes, my printer just doesn't feel like working that day, or, I ran out of ink and forgot to bring paper or whatever. I just don't do it. So it's nothing I need to stress about because my clients weren't expecting it anyway.
And you mentioned earlier on too that your husband is a filmmaker, right? He does wedding films. Is that?
Yeah, you can find him at robadamsfilms.com, or you can just go to my website and you'll see on the splash page a link to the cinematography side.
So did you ever fight over clients? You mentioned that you share clients occasionally as well.
We probably shoot about 40 to 50% of our weddings together, and then the other half are separate.
When you say films, I mean, I am thinking video, right? But I mean, I'm assuming he's a wedding videographer, right? Is that, or am I dumbing down what he's really doing?
He would tell you, and most people who define themselves as wedding filmmakers or cinematographers would definitely not like being called a videographer because it has a sort of connotation to old school videography, but
right.
it is a video, as not to be confused, but it is completely unique. It's more film, has more film aesthetics to it, so more movie making style techniques.
Having done videography in the past, I was doing the underwater videography. It's a definite skill to be able to create something that looks cinematic, and right. has real depth to it. There's not a lot of people really doing that sort of very, very high level of work. So you occasionally share clients and all that kind of thing. And I guess, the fact that there's two of you promoting work in two different areas of the wedding business, that you get some kind of crossover in your marketing too.
Absolutely. We can recommend each other. That's another good marketing tip is find vendors that you can refer business with, back and forth. And he's kind of built in for that.
Yeah, it wouldn't say much, would it? Well, I know a videographer, but I really wouldn't recommend him. So.
He's really quite horrible.
He forgot to empty the dishwasher this morning. I'm not going to recommend him.
Funny.
So this same day editing stuff aside, which I think is insane, is really remarkable. What about the rest of the workflow? So for coming back after the wedding, you've got all the photographs, you got a bunch of camera cards and so on. What happens then? Can you give us a sort of a quick run through of what your typical sort of workflow looks like?
When I come back from the weddings, it's, download and backup right away. It's really very simple from there, I guess. I'm going to tell you my workflow and you're going to be like, well, what about this, this, and this? And anything you're thinking about this, and this is done the night of the wedding. So I'll just preface that. Okay. So really all I do is I come in, I download my cards. The next day I cull my photos, down to roughly 800-ish pictures per wedding. And then I send it out to be outsourced for proofing, color correcting, that kind of thing. They upload the pictures to my online proofing gallery. And I let my clients know they're ready and we start the album process. I have a graphic designer on staff and she will create an album pre-design for them. So when they come in, hopefully around 4 or 5 weeks after their wedding to pick out their album cover. I already have a pre-designed album ready for them to start working with to make changes to. They can make changes from there, but it makes it very easy for them to finish their album, and they finish it and we send it to print and we all move on.
You obviously have some really good resources that you can call on to help you with this stuff. You've got the outsourcing things, you've got the designer, you have your assistant that helps you on the day and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. For the lone photographer, if you like, the person who really, they're the ones that open up the door, sweep the floors, design the books, take the photographs, clean the bathrooms, all that kind of stuff. They're it. Would you say that having a higher priced business model is an advantage for them too, because it gives them time to be able to do all of this stuff?
Yes, and it doesn't have to be that much higher price. That's the interesting thing about when you talk about workflow. A lot of people sort of get apprehensive and, well, I can't afford to outsource it, or I can't afford to have somebody in here. But the truth of it is you really can. An assistant the day of the wedding, one, you can probably find one for free because there's a lot of photographers coming into the business that just want to learn. But even if you don't find one for free, the going rate is $10 an hour. Mm-hmm. 10-hour wedding day, that's $100. Raise your prices by $100 and see what you get out of it. Same thing when it comes to outsourcing your images. It used to be, $400 per wedding. That's a lot. Now, the company that I use, evolveedits.com, they have a subscription plan. So if you're doing more than 20 shoots in an entire year, you're essentially only paying a little over $100 per shoot. So, it's really quite feasible to outsource, and you should be outsourcing, because for me, I define my success by how much free time I have to improve the quality of life outside of work. Not that I don't love what I do, but I love my family and friends too. Yeah. And the more time that I can spend with them while still running a successful business, that's the definition of success for me.
Any words of advice for people who might not want to let go of that part of the process? Like they say, oh, well, no one's going to edit my photographs the way that I do.
One of the things that I would say to start off with are the things that you don't necessarily need control over, like that $10 hour work, finding somebody to do Facebook posting for you, or finding someone to open shipping things that come in and then ship things out to your clients, stuff like that you really just don't need artistic control of, but it's stuff that it takes up time that you could be using more wisely somewhere else.
I would like to have some free time now and again. I think that's something that a lot of photographers listening to this are probably thinking to themselves, well, free time, what's that? That would be nice. I spend till 3:00 in the morning chained to my computer being bathed in electrons from my monitor and just really not feeling very good and having to edit and retouch and all that kind of thing. Do you have any words of advice for them that might encourage them to maybe look at it in a slightly different way, or maybe speed things up?
The way I would just look at it was, why did you become a photographer? And you didn't become a photographer to sit in front of the glowing monitor all hours of the night.
No.
So make changes that will reflect that will, bring you back to your original dream of why you're doing this.
I think, one of the things that really made me want to get things right in the camera very quickly was the fact that I just cannot abide Photoshop. And other photographers look at me like I'm some kind of an alien creature when I say that. I say I just don't like Photoshop at all. I find it the most tedious, most boring thing to work on the planet. It just sends me to sleep.
Right.
And so I like to have my photos right in the camera as much as possible, and then I'll use Lightroom to edit them and retouch them a little bit. But I don't spend very, very long on them. On each one, I just get through them as fast as I can because I don't like doing it.
Right.
But I like
Absolutely.
doing a good job. I'm not careless with it. I still like to have a good end result. Like you, I think I would rather have somebody else mess around with Photoshop for me if it was necessary.
Yeah, definitely outsource the things you hate doing.
So for photographers that are new to the business, they've decided yesterday that they want to be a wedding photographer. They're going to have a crack at it and all that kind of thing. But a lot of them are making mistakes. And naturally, it's not because they're dumb or anything. It's just a lot of these things just broadside you, and you don't really see them coming. But what are some of the mistakes that you see new photographers making?
one of the biggest mistakes that ends up being a disservice to them, the industry, and their clients that I see new photographers make would be the fact that for some reason there's a misconception that if you want to be a wedding photographer, step one is to start your own business and to start shooting weddings. And that is absolutely not step one. That's like step 52. If you want to be a wedding photographer, the first thing that you should be doing is working for other wedding photographers. And that's not to say like you need to pay your dues or coming from that kind of attitude. But the truth of the matter is learn on other people's money, learn on other people's businesses, make mistakes with other people's clients, take that learning experience that you need in order to be a successful wedding photographer and, do it somewhere else and then learn enough to where you feel like you've become stable and confident and then take it and start your own business. So I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see photographers making. It becomes very frustrating because then they're really starting off with absolutely no experience and starting off on the wrong foot with the wrong or lack of information, I would say.
Yeah, so you mean practicing on real people's weddings is probably not the way to go?
No, that just causes gray hairs and lawsuits.
We see all these stories all the time in the news of bride, gutted by this wedding photographer that not only trashed her photos, but ran away and didn't bother to give them a book, didn't do this and didn't do that. But, even that's an extreme, but a lot of times on Facebook, for example, I observe conversations where photographers are really kind of ranting about clients that are giving them a hard time. And you look at the conversation and you look at the details of what they're saying and think to yourself, well, sorry, but really this is kind of your fault.
Right. Absolutely. The funniest thing is you see people having those conversations online, whether it's something with their clients or something they don't know how to use. And a lot of people use online photography communities as a crutch where they don't have to do their own learning because 5 minutes before they walk into the church, if they just post, hey, what should my settings be? They'll get some answers. Yeah. I've seen it. That is a direct quote. How do I use my flash? Mm-hmm.
It's not a good thing. Don't practice on people's real weddings because you wouldn't want someone practicing on your wedding. You'd want it done right. And there's no shame in being unaware of what you don't know.
Absolutely. Some photographers, when they first start out, they're absolutely talented photographers right off the bat. But that doesn't mean you know how to shoot a wedding, run a business, and everything else that comes along with it. So, don't make mistakes with your own clients and with your own company. Learn first with someone else.
Exactly, yeah, because there's plenty of mistakes to go around, folks.
Yes.
There's no shortage of those. So if you could jump in a time machine and you could go all the way back to when you started out in business, what advice would you have for your younger self that might help other people and something they could learn from?
I would say work on relationships. I think some of the biggest mistakes that I made when I was first starting out was to not think about the relationships that I was making with other photographers or photographers I had worked with previously, and just not having enough information, I would say, about industry norms. Like you said, respecting the people who have, trodden the path before us, just to become more sensitive to that kind of thing, because I accidentally burned a few bridges just not understanding, certain norms when it came to working with other photographers, for other photographers, and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Well, Vanessa, thank you so much. This has been really a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed our chat today.
Me too.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your knowledge. And for anyone that's going to WPPI in Vegas this year in 2015, then go check out Vanessa's program on workflow. I'm sure you'll get a ton of great stuff out of it. And I, for one, if I was there, I would be on that same day editing thing in a heartbeat if I was still doing weddings, because I think that's just phenomenal. I just love that idea.
Thank you. Yeah, it's going to be March 2nd. My platform class is at 6:30 that night at WPPI. So definitely come by. Lots of tips and tricks and things that'll make your life easier. You'll leave quite happy and motivated to make some changes.
You can't ask for anything more than that. That's fantastic. Well, Vanessa, thanks again. And maybe we'll get you back on again at some point and we'll talk about some other elements of this amazing process that you've got going on.
Absolutely.